Alright guys, so we're back for the second video. So this is where we left off. Your homework, as it was to write a couple short paragraphs underneath each of the headings. So let's check that out, and I'll show you what I did here. So you can kind of take a look in case you were stuck and you need an example. So here's my glitch project. And this is all the stuff we looked at before, and we'll skip down, and this is all the content that I wrote, all the code that I wrote. So you can see I've got my H1, and then a paragraph tag, and H2 all the way through. You can see underneath my H3, I've got a couple of paragraphs. It's kind of hard to look at like this, so let's check it out actually on the page. So here's our output, right? Here's what it ends up actually looking like. And you can see we've got some italics here, bold sitting over there, stuff like that, right? And again, we talked about like it can be a little intimidating to look at this all at once, but you're only building it one line at a time, and most of this is this stuff right here, right? When we're developing websites, when I'm working for a client, they're not paying me to write content. So a lot of times we'll just pull some garbage, fake content from what we call like lorem ipsum. It's something that typesetters used for hundreds of years. This one happens to be a Star Wars ipsum, so you might recognize some of these Star Wars words here if you're into Star Wars. So we just kind of threw that in there. It fills it up really fast so we can get some content in there without me having to sit here and wait and think and write, what goes in there. I want you to notice one other thing here. Is this right here. See these big empty spaces here and big empty spaces here? I went ahead and gave myself some space between what Glitch gave us and what I was writing. So I just had a nice visual like, hey, this is all Glitch's stuff. This isn't stuff that I wrote right now, but this is my stuff here. And we'll kind of do more of that, more formatting so that it's easy for you to read as we go along. But just remember that, like we talked about, white space is only for humans. The computer doesn't care. If I got rid of all this white space, if I made it one single line, all of this code, it would still show up exactly the same way. So let's get moving on. All right. So let's go a little bit deeper into the anatomy of an HTML element. We went over this a little bit. We looked at what the opening tag and a closing tag looked like. But let's kind of look inside of those tags a little bit and see what's in there. So we have something called an attribute. And you can read here, provides additional information about the HTML element, or some examples: class, ID, language, style, identity, source, blah, 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 blah. There's a whole bunch of them. Depends on what HTML elements you're looking at, but there's different attributes available to you. We always put them inside the opening tag before the right angle bracket. So here's some examples here, right? So in this case, we have a div and we have an ID, right? So that's an attribute. That ID is an attribute. So you notice how we format it. We have, say, ID equals, and then in quotation marks, we add what we call the value. It's what's assigned to the attribute, right? So we're saying this div here has an ID, and that ID is copyright. We can note it here, they must be contained inside quotation marks. So let's look at a couple more. So this is an IMG tag. Can you guess what that might be? Yeah, it's an image, right? So this is SRC, it's short for source, right? So we're saying the source of the image, source equals, and then here's my image file that I want to show up. This is an A tag here, which we'll actually get to here in the next slide. But this is an href. That's one that's fairly unique to A tags, but what A tags are is they create links. So we'll say, hey, the href equals, and this is telling the code, when somebody clicks on this, what do I want to happen? Where do I want them to go? In this case, we want to go to Bitstream Academy, right? So that kind of gets into the internal anatomy a little bit, right? So let's kind of take a look, and we'll put this into practice a bit here. All right, so the link element. So this is where I really enjoy getting into this stuff. The first video, we were going over like the real basic structure stuff, like words you have to know. Here's just what things look like. This is where when I first started to learn to code, that I had a lot of fun because you're actually putting stuff on a page that does stuff, right? And it's pretty satisfying, at least for me. Like I said last video, maybe I'm easily impressed, but let's take a look. So the links have three components that you should always include. The first is the tag. That's hopefully an obvious one now. We have to wrap it in a tag for the code to know that, hey, this is something different than just plain text, right? We have the tag. We have the href attribute. That's where we want the tag to go when I click on it. That's where I want it to lead. And there are things other than website addresses you can put in there, which we'll get into here a little bit. The other thing that's nice to put on there is a title attribute. This isn't strictly necessary, but it is nice, especially if for some reason it gets broken or something like that. As you'll see what we do, if we can wrap A tags around other things, it does help tell the user kind of what's going on and where they're going to go. So what you'll see here, this is actual link here, A tag. So we've got some styles on there. So when I hover, it turns red and gets underlined. Now, if I keep it hovered for a second, you'll see that little tooltip pop up that says Bitstream Academy. That's what the title tag does. It just shows up that little tooltip. If you don't want that there, you can get rid of it. It doesn't really matter, but it is helpful. So yeah, as you can see here, let's take a look at the full thing. We got to scroll a little bit, but this is the opening bracket of our A tag. We have our A, that's our character, remember? And then we have all this attribute stuff here. That's just stuff we've added. And then here's the close bracket of, it's the greater than symbol, right? That closes the opening tag. We have our text. This is what we want to be a link. And then we have our close A tag, all right? So we're surrounding the text or images, and that turns them into links. All right, so before we move on to other attributes that you can add to these links, to these A tags, let's try it out a little bit, okay? Let's get some practice here. So let's pick something in our content here. So we're just gonna pick whatever random text here. It doesn't really matter. I'm gonna pick the first 3 words here, 3 or 4 words. So I'm gonna say A, and I'm gonna close it. This is a habit I've always gotten into where I wanna create the tag first. When I was first learning to code, I would do something like this. I'd create the A, and I'd say href equals, and then I'd put something in here, and then I'd, do da-da-da-da-da-da, whatever goes in here, and I'd close it, and without Glitch's help, I would start typing, and I'd forget to actually close that A tag, because remember, they come in pairs. So this is a good habit. Glitch helps you out with that a lot, but if you're not using Glitch at some point when you're working on your own code, it's a good habit to create the tag, and then what I would do is I just highlight this, and then I use Control X, but you can right click and say cut, and then I figure out where I want that link to end, and I just paste it in there. All right, so now I know it's wrapped, I know it's complete, I know that this is a link. In fact, if we look at it over here, actually, yeah, no, it's not styled yet because the browser is expecting our first required attribute, which is the href. So let's say href equals, all right, and let's just give it any old site. Let's just say www.google.com, okay? Now, if we go over here, let's see if this is updated. Yep. So now if I click on this, oh, it took me not to Google. Why? Well, let's take a look over here at our slide one more time here. All right, do you notice what I did differently? All right, think about that for a second. What I typed was just www.bitstream or I just typed google.com, right? I didn't include this. Now, we talked about this a little bit, but this is what we call the protocol, right? So this is an important thing. This tells the link that, hey, this is a website address, and here's what type. So you might see, especially if you're shopping or something like that, HTTPS. That means it's secure, it's encrypted, some extra security. You don't need to worry about that right now, but we'll have to make sure when we do links, we want that in there. So let's go back and let's fix our link so it works correctly. See, otherwise it thinks that maybe this is another part of my site. So let's do http:// and you'll get used to that. And if you go to any site, so if, let me flip back over to our slides here. So if I'm over here, and if I click just in my address bar here, and I copy, now let's go over here, and I'll just paste this in here at the top so you can see. Chrome is going to go ahead and give me that at the beginning. So if you're copying this from somewhere else, from a site, if you just copy it from that address bar, makes it really easy. You don't have to worry about, was it HTTP, what? Was it an S? I don't know. So you don't have to worry about that. All right, so we fixed our link here. So let's test that out. And a big part of coding is always testing. Make small changes, try it out. Make a small change, try it out. Because if you try to do too much at once, oftentimes you'll find out you made a mistake way back, and it's a whole lot more effort to go back and fix it. So I do a lot of back and forth. So we fix this. Let's try it out. And let's click on the link again. Hey, and it took us to Google. All right. So that did exactly what we wanted it to do. That's not too shabby. Let's try it one more time. Let's maybe make this Hi BizStream Academy a link. So we'll make the big title a link. So I'll make my A tag, cut and paste, and we'll give it a href. All right, now I'm going to be a little tricky, okay? I'm going to add one more attribute here. I'm going to add a target attribute. So this is a little extra. Let's say target equals underscore blank. And before I show you what this does, I want you to think about what that might do. It's not super obvious, but think about what that might do. It's always good to look at things when you're coding and kind of try to reason out what it's trying to get at here, what it's trying to do. Usually, the people who develop the code and everything, they're trying to make it fairly obvious so you don't have to remember all this esoteric stuff. This one's a little bit less obvious. All right, so let's go over here and check it out. So we've got this turned into a link here, our H1, right? And if I click on it, let's see what happens. Hey, it opened BizStream Academy, just like we expected, but did you notice the difference here? I'm in a new tab here. I still have my tab open over here with my site, but it opened up a new tab with a link. That's a really useful little attribute to toss on if you're linking to someplace other than your site. You kind of want users to stay on your site. You want them to stay there as long as possible, but you want to send them off and let them look something else up. This is really helpful because it forces a new tab to open, and then you can kind of keep showing them. So let's keep going. All right, let's get into some more attributes. All right, some link attributes. Oh, and I kind of skipped ahead here. So we've got our target blank that we just talked about. You can reference this. So now that you're trying it out, we can see that right here. It opens up a new window or tab, and the next one here is adding something to the href itself. So this is something that's kind of cool. I really liked it. And when I discovered this was an option, I was like, hey, that's pretty neat. So you can see what we added to. We have something very different here. We don't see any sort of http:// nothing here, right? But you might recognize this is an email address. So we want to make this a link to an email address. Well, but think about that for a second. If I click on a link to an email address, where's that going to go? What is that going to do, right? Normally, not really much of anything, right? You can't navigate to an email address. But we can add this little mail to and a colon. And what that's indicating to the browser is to go ahead and open up your default email program, whatever that might be, and send an email to this email address. This is really nice, especially on your phone. A lot of us don't have email programs set up on our computer. A lot of us use Gmail or something like that, where it's just another site, another website, right? But on your phone, you do have an email program, and this will pop that open so you can see that. Okay, so let's check that out. There's other ones that you can do the same thing there. Instead of mail to, we could write TEL, tel, colon, and then write a telephone number. And then when you're on your cell phone and you tap on a phone number, it'll automatically bring up your dialer and call that number. Fun little stuff, handy little things. There's a few different things like that that you can add in there. In fact, you can even go so far as you can look this up. Maybe this is maybe a little challenge activity for you here. You can add extra attributes here to actually fill out the subject line of the email for you and some text and that sort of stuff. It's kind of cool. All right, so let's keep going. Let's talk about the paths. Okay, so we talked about in our intro that a website is really just a bunch of files sitting in a folder on somebody's computer, right? So when we talk about the path, we're talking about something like this. Let me open up one of my folders here. Here's my folder where I'm doing all these recordings, right? And this is the path, right? It's like a little address, so I can go to anywhere I want on my computer. Go in here, local C disk. Let's go into repos. This is where I keep all my repositories. And I can look in here and I can see the path, C:\repos. You may have seen that before, right? We have two different types of paths. So one is a relative path. So the relative path is relative to something else, right? It changes depending on the page the link is on. So links within the same directory or folder need no path information. File name.jpg. Okay, so that a good example of that would be over here in our glitch project. If I had, we've got index.html, we got scripts.js, style.cs. If I had my file name.jpg, my little picture sitting in here right at this level, I could just put in file name.jpg into that, and it would link directly to that. Because it's not another folder, it's right on the same level with my index.html here, right? Subfolders are listed without preceding slashes, okay? So let's say I put it in a folder, image/filename.jpg. So this img would be my folder name, and then I'm saying look inside the image folder and find filename.jpg, okay? We'll have a chance to practice this here a little bit, so let's just keep going. Absolute paths. This is the one you're probably going to use most often to start out with. But absolute paths, they refer to a specific location of a file, including the domain and everything, right? So this is what we were just practicing with our links, with our A tags, http://www. So this is the exact address that we want to go to. It doesn't matter what site I'm currently on. It's saying, hey, go to this site, right? Typically, we use it when we're pointing to a link that's not within your own domain. So our domain here is bizstreamacademy.com, right? All right, let's keep going. So enough talk, let's code. Let's add some links to our HTML. Go ahead and add links that open in the same window, in a new window, and link to an email address. So what I want you to do is we're going to keep this on the same video. I want you to go ahead and pause and work on that. And when you're all set, you've got links that open in the same window, new window, and an email address, go ahead and unpause the video and we'll go on to the next slide. All right, how did it go? Did you get it? Was it hard? Hopefully you got it pretty well. All right. I'm not going to walk through these examples right now. We just kind of went through some examples, so hopefully you were able to follow along. So let's move on. This is a fun one. Images. All right. So images, we have 3 components. So we had 3 components on the A tag. We have 3 components on the image tag as well. So the first thing is we start with our tag itself. Now you'll notice something here. This is the first time we've seen a standalone tag. We talked about that in the last video. Most tags come in pairs, right? We talked about like an open A tag and a close A tag, an open P tag and a close P tag, an open H1 and a close H1. An image tag is a standalone. It doesn't have an open and a close. And if you think about it, it makes kind of sense, right? An image is an image. We don't need to put anything inside the tags, right? There's no more content to go in there. We're saying here is the image. What we do need to add are a couple of attributes. So we have the source attribute, src, and that is the location of the file. You can see here we have a absolute path. Yep, an absolute path here for this image. And then we have an alt attribute. This one's important, and I'll tell you why. You can leave this off and your image will work just fine. You'll still be able to see it, no problem. What the alt attribute does is a couple of things. If you've ever been to a website where there was a broken image, and you kind of see that it's like it looks like a little image with a rip through it. If for some reason the site can't load your image, it can't find it, there's a problem with the connection and it just can't get to it, it will display this alt tag. So at least the user has some information about what you were trying to show them. Most of the time that's not really something we have to worry too much about. But the more helpful thing is when we think about web accessibility. So what's web accessibility? That's making sure that the internet is accessible to everyone, regardless of whether they are fully abled people or if they have vision impairments or hearing impairments and that sort of thing. So the alt attribute really helps people with vision impairments. Those people are going to use a screen reader to navigate the internet, so they have a piece of software that's going to read everything to them. Well, it can't read a picture to you, right? The software is not going to be able to describe the picture. It's not going to be able to look at it and say, hey, this is some mountains with a river. It doesn't know how to do that. What it can do, though, is it can read the alt attribute. So you want something that's descriptive. It doesn't have to be super long, but you want something that kind of tells the user, hey, this is what is there. So let's go ahead and try this out. Let's get an image here. So we'll go here right below our first paragraph. We'll give ourselves some space, and I'll say open bracket img, and then I'm gonna go ahead and just finish it out. So I got my full tag. All right, so I got my full tag there. Now we can go over here. Not gonna see anything, right? There's nothing there. There's just an empty space there where I added some space. So let's add our attributes to it. Source equals, and I'm going to go ahead and copy exactly what we have on the slide as an example. And we're going to paste that in there. All right. So now when I open up this, I should see, hey, there's the Bitstream Academy logo. It went and you told the browser to say, hey, go exactly to this website here. I want you to go to that website, find this file, and show it on my site. And that's the way you can do that. Now I want to point one other thing out here. You can do this with any site, with any image. I can go pretty much anywhere and find the path for that image and include it on my site. Now, just like you've talked about in probably English class or something like that with plagiarism, we have to make sure that we respect people's copyright rights to their property, right? So if I start using Amazon logos and other things in here that I don't have permission to use, probably don't want to do that, right? So let's take a look at another option here. Let's add an asset directly to our glitch project. Let's say upload an asset. All right, so I've got, let's see here. Let's go into my pictures. Let's take a picture of me where I used FaceApp to make myself look really, really awesome. I look nice and old, right? And let's take a look at that. And actually, yeah. So we'll go ahead, and the way Glitch handles this is a little bit different. So we'll go ahead and hit copy. Close that, and we'll go back over to our index file, and then I can put that in here. Now you'll notice this address is really long and weird. Glitch is giving it a unique ID, so it's why all of this gobbledygook is here. And then this is the file name, which my file name was a little ugly anyway, right? So if I go back over here and I load this up, I can see my beautiful mug looking really awesome here. When you build a website from scratch on your computer and you deploy it out to the internet when you're not using Glitch itself, this again is where we could say, hey, I just want a relative path here. I don't need you to go look for a specific address. I'm just going to say, go to logo.png. And if I have that file in the same folder, the site will find it and it'll show up. Otherwise, we'll get something like this. There's our little broken image thing saying, hey, I looked for that file, I couldn't find it. Now let's take a look at what that alt attribute does. So let's say I want to say this is my my site logo, right? Well, let's see what that does out here. See, it displays that text right here. So at least you get an idea of what's there. And again, that's the same thing that users who use screen readers are going to see as well. So let me put my image path back in here. Let's go out here. So now we're there, and we have that, and we have our alt attribute, and this is all ready to go. A good thing. All right. And that's it. No problem. So let's go ahead and add a few images to your page. Pick some, whatever your site's about, just pictures you like. It helps to stick within the theme, especially because we're going to present these here at the end of the day, right? So whatever your site's about, find a few pictures. You want to upload them to your assets folder, and then you're going to copy that CDN absolute path. That's that big long link that we just looked at that Glitch provides you. We're going to use that as the source for it. As a kind of extra credit thing, see if you can go and find some pictures on like Google Images. See if you can figure out how to include those on your page and on your site without actually uploading them to Glitch at all. See if you can figure that out, all right? You have all the tools you need for it. See if you can figure it out. All right, we'll see you in the next video.